Hey guys, Dylan from Noble Records coming at you with another video. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I've hesitated to do it for a while just because these are somewhat embarrassing stories, but I was talking to somebody at the shop the other day, and I was telling him one of these stories, and the guy's like, man, you should write a book. These are crazy. I told him a bunch of stories. I've got a lot that are kind of crazy and unbelievable stories, over the years. Going into people's homes and things like that, buying collections from all over the country, really. I've gotten myself into some crazy situations. 90%, 95% of the time, everything's totally normal, everything's totally fine, but there's a slim percentage of things that, like a margin for error where things can go wrong. So before we get started, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I would love it if you subscribe to the channel, help support us. And if you've already subscribed to the channel, subscribe from somebody else's account. Just help me out. I'm just kidding. Also, we run a record store in Matthews, North Carolina called Noble Records, where we buy big collections, recommend records, things like that. So follow us on Instagram at Noble Records. Would love to stay connected with you there. So, first, I'll tell you guys, saving the best story for last, so hang on till the very end. First story, this is classic, when I was, a lot of these happened when I was pretty young, because I was stupid then. But this was probably 2013, 14, where I was, I don't know, in my early 20s. And I was, I was in my late 20s, in my mid 20s. I was in my 20s at some point. But I was going through this building. So, those little outbuildings that are outside people's houses that kind of look like barns, but they're not barns. I was in one of those bad boys, and I was flipping through some records. I was in the very back. I had a flashlight in my mouth, and I was looking through some records, and this thing was like a hoarder's, it was damp. It was nasty. It had spider webs everywhere. It was creepy. I had the heebie-jeebies, but I'm going through these records and I'm finding some killer stuff. So I keep going. I know what you're thinking. Like, well, if it's damp, aren't the records damaged? Some of them were, some of them weren't. I didn't care. I was young. I was going after it. And most of this time, I was just collecting. So I was just after them for myself. I wasn't selling. I was selling, but it wasn't as big of, it wasn't like my main income. It was just kind of something I did on the side. So I was going through this, and it seemed like the deeper I got into this storage unit or this building, I was just finding better stuff, and it was just like I was pulling out these killer jazz records and funk records and stuff I'd never seen before. It almost seemed like a dream, right? I'm back there, I'm sweating, it's hot, it's musty. I got spider webs on my face, spider webs on my arm. Got my heebie-jeebies. And I'm going through, and I felt something bite my arm right here. And I was like, immediately look over, I had the flashlight in my mouth, and to my absolute horror, I see a black widow on my arm. I wipe it off as fast as I can. I jump up, I leave all the records, everything in there. I run out, I look, and then you can see where it bit me. It had the bite marks right there. And the guy that I was with, I was like, dude, I just got bit by a black widow. I gotta come back later. I'm like in trouble here. And he's like, are you sure you need me to call an ambulance or something? I'm like, nah, I'll be fine. Because I was young and I was broke and I couldn't afford an ambulance ride. So I was like, I'll drive home. So I drove home probably like 15, 20 minutes, got home. And by that time, like, I'm feeling sick. I'm like burning up. I've got like, I've got the heaves, and I'm just feeling bad, I remember laying on my couch like this, and I remember having my arm like this and looking over and not being able to move it. And my wife was like, we're going to get you to the hospital. I'm like, no hospital. So I took a bunch of Benadryl, and I was like, if this is it, I went out doing something I love, whatever. I was young and stupid. I wasn't thinking about my future or anything like that. I should have gone to the hospital, but I was just so afraid of having to have these hospital bills or whatever, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So I took all this Benadryl, went to bed, slept hours. I think I woke up like around midnight or something, like 6 hours later, and I was just feeling bad. I had a headache. I kept drinking water as much as I could. I remember feeling just really sick, like I was gonna throw up. And then my arm was just like, it was getting hard. Like I could, my muscles were seizing up. I couldn't really move my arm that well. So I ended up taking some more Benadryl, going back to bed, waking up the next morning, and it literally, it wasn't this bad, but in my head, the way I remember it, I felt like I could knock on it, and that's how hard it was, right there on my arm. But I was alive, and I was feeling a little bit better, so I went to work. I was working a job doing graphic design. I did that for a couple of years. So I went to work, and the whole day, man, I just felt like death warmed over, and ended up making it through that day, and it just kept getting a little bit better and a little bit better till it's fine. But that scared me. I didn't know if I was going to lose my arm. I didn't know. I called some friends of mine that were in the medical field, and they were like, well, you'll probably be all right. Adults usually live through it, so you'll probably be fine if you've made it this long. So anyways, so that was the time I got bit by a black widow. Second one, there's a lot of things that I don't do anymore. I learned the hard way. I don't do certain things anymore. As I've gotten older and wiser, and I value my life more, there's certain things I just don't do anymore. I don't carry large sums of cash anymore. I don't, I vet people a little bit more before I go into their house. This is probably 2012-ish. I was, in 2012, let's see, I was probably 24. And this guy had an ad on Craigslist. He had a bunch of stuff for sale, and records were listed. So I called him. I said, what kind of records do you have? And he's like, well, I've got, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, all the good stuff you want to hear. And I said, sweet, how much you want for them? He said, $5 each. I said, awesome. I said, and he said, he had a very specific time he wanted me to come and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I had some plans, canceled my plans. It was really inconvenient to get there. It was about an hour away from my house. I didn't want to drive that far. I didn't want to cancel the plans, but what he had seemed so good. I needed to get out there, whatever, at the time. Got out there. My wife, back then, this is before we had kids. My wife would usually come with me and just wait in the car. She'd read a book or something. She didn't mind. She just wanted to be with me. She wanted to be involved. And so she was waiting in the car. I go into this guy's house. Going in, he takes me down to the basement. Listen, guys, just don't go in the basement. That's one piece of advice. Try not to be going in a basement, all right? Because there's no way out. If you get into a sticky situation, there's no way out. Anyways, get down in this guy's basement. This is not the only story I have that involves a basement. I've got several. But get down in there, and I'm looking through these crates of records, and I don't even think anything of it, right? This guy's got a couple dogs with him. He's kind of peering over me. He's real cold, this is kind of an older guy. Real intimidating type of guy, and I'm looking through the records, and I'm picking the ones out that I want, and then leaving, because there's some things in there, like there's some cheaper records that I didn't need and didn't want, that I was leaving behind, and I picked out a stack probably that big, and was, counted them out, how many ever, and did the math on $5 each, and he said, you can't buy just that stack, you gotta buy them all. And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of money, I'm a kid, I'm 24 years old, I don't have, that kind of money. He's like, well, I told you that if you were gonna come here, and he got real harsh with me, like real rude, immediate, like it got hostile. And I was like, man, I'm sorry if there's a misunderstanding. I was kind of upset as well, because I drove all the way out here, and I could have sworn he said on the phone that I could pick the ones I wanted, but it was kind of one of those things. He might have said, he might not have. Maybe that was just me thinking it, but he got real hostile and real rude, and he said, I know that you have $3,000 with you, because I told you there were 600 records at $5 each, and I know that you're not going to drive an hour out here without that money on you. And he said, I need that money, and I'm going to get that money before you leave here today. And I said, dude, I do not have that kind of money. And I pulled out the money and showed him that I had. I said, this is the amount of money that I have. I don't have $3,000. I didn't expect to buy them all. I can buy the ones that I picked out, but I can't buy them all. And he said, he said, hand me that money then. And I said, no, I'm not going to hand you this money. And he pulled a gun on me. I'm not joking. I'm not lying. He pulls a gun out on me. He says, you're going to hand me that money. And he said, I have a hard time believing you don't have any more than that. And I said, I don't. I said, I don't have any more money. And he said, hand me that money. And I said, I'm going to put this money in my pocket and I'm walking out of your house. And he said, I could shoot you here. And in North Carolina, the way the laws are, I could say you broke in. I'm well within my rights to shoot you if you broke into my house, in North Carolina. And I said, well, that's fine. But I said, I'm not armed, and you can't shoot me in the back. I said, if you shoot me in the back, you go to jail. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I told him. I said, you can't shoot me in the back. So I put the money in my pocket and walked out. And I walked with my back facing him the whole way. Walked down his driveway. My wife's sitting in the car, and I'm quickly pacing to the car. And as he's shooting over my head, you can ask my wife, this really happened. He's shooting over my head, going ballistic. And my wife was like, "What is happening?" And I start running to the car. I jump in the car. We peel out of there. And at that point, she was like, "You're not going to anybody's house ever again." And I was like, "Okay, I won't." But I did. But still, that was a crazy one. So the only way I got out of there is that I told him that he couldn't shoot me in the back. I don't think he was really going to shoot me, but he wanted to intimidate me enough. And at that time, the $300 I had in my pocket was a lot of money. And now I'd have just given him the money now and just forgotten about it. But that's what happened. That was crazy. So third story, probably the best one. This was probably 2010. Maybe 2011, but early, I got married in 2010. Me and my wife, when we first got married, I didn't have much money. Very, very broke. I worked a lot of gigs, a lot of side stuff. My main thing, I was doing a lot of landscaping and stuff like that, but when there was no grass to be cut in December, I would take some seasonal gigs. Like in October, we had some friends that ran a pumpkin patch, and in December, they ran a Christmas tree lot. So I would always work the Christmas tree lot, sometimes work the pumpkin patch. But this particular year, it was cold, wet, nasty day in December, and I was working the Christmas tree lot. So basically what you would do is somebody would come up and they'd be looking around for a tree, and you say, "Hey sir, can I help you with anything?" And they'd say, yeah, I'm looking for a 10-foot tree, and blah, 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 and it needed to be this type and this shape and whatever. And I say, all right, well, we got some right over here. We take them over there. Does this work for you? They say, yeah. You grab the tree, you put it on, you strap it on their car as they're paying for it, and then they're out of there. That was the job. Did it a million times a day. You get good tips. It was awesome. So anyways, this one particular day, this guy comes up, and we start talking, and he's like, "Is this your main job? Do you own this place?" And I'm like, "No, dude. I'm young." At that point, I was 22 years old or so. And I said, "No, I'm just working for the family, whatever." And he said, "What's your main thing?" And I was like, "Well, I do a lot of different things." And so at some point, I told him that I bought and sold records. And he said, "Man, I got a ton of records in my house. You should come over and see them." And I mean, this guy was being real friendly. And I didn't think anything of it. I just was like, "Yeah, man, you said records. I'm coming." So I said, "I don't get off till like 9. So he's like, "Not a problem. That's actually perfect. I'm more of a night owl anyways. Here's my address. I live right down the street. Why don't you come over and I'll show you some really good records?" And I said, "Sure. What could ever go wrong with this picture?" So I called my wife. I said, "This guy down the street has the records." And so with my wife, I always send her what address I'm going to. I text her all the information. So, if anything were to happen to me, she would have that. So texted her the address, all that stuff. Go to this guy's house. And really nice. He's all festive. He's got, decorations out. It's a very nice house. Very warming. He said the records are, you guessed it, in the freaking basement. So I go down in the basement. There's all these records, and I just remember going through. And he's like, "Yeah, record." He's like, "I'll sell you anything down here." They're kind of all different prices, but most of them are like $2 to $5. And I'm like, all right, sweet. So I'm going, and there's just shelves and shelves, like more records than I've got here. Shelves and shelves of records, and then he's got like reel to reels, and he's got so I collect reel to reels, and they're really hard to find. like good titles of reel to reel. So he's got like Black Sabbath stuff. He's got, I think he had like a copy of Led Zeppelin 3, which is my favorite album of all time. So I've got all these reels stacked up, and I've got all these records, and I'm going through it, and I remember seeing like a bunch of Velvet Underground and things that I really had been wanting. So I'm like sweating. I'm so excited. I'm looking through. I'm like, bam, 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 bam. And so I'm pulling all this stuff, making a stack. And he kept asking me like 1,000 times, hey, can I get you something to drink? Hey, can I get you something to drink? And first rule of thumb, this has always been my rule. I do not take a drink when I'm over at somebody's house. 100%. I don't care if it's sealed. I don't care if it's what. I do not take a drink. I will bring a water bottle with me if I'm coming. I'll bring a cooler if I'm going on a long pick. But I will absolutely 0% chance I'm taking a drink from anybody. I will not do it. This was before I saw the Dahmer thing. But I will not take a drink. It's just obvious. But he kept asking me, and I said, listen, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink. Not to mention, I don't drink alcohol, and I don't need anything else to drink. So I'm going through, and it was just kind of weird how much he had asked me that. I was like, whatever. And he kept asking me, do you need to use the restroom? Do you need to use the restroom? I said, I don't need to use the restroom. I'm good. I don't need to use the restroom. And so it was just awkward, and it was peculiar how much he was asking these questions. And I was like, whatever. So I'm digging, and I look up, and he's coming down the basement stairs with a robe on that is open, no shirt, no pants, but he has like this, I don't remember the exact color, but I want to say it was a leopard thong type situation on. It was some sort of a scandalous undergarment that was very skimpy. And I said, oh. And he said, is there anything I can do to make you any more comfortable? I said, sir, I will have that drink. And he's like, ooh. And he goes upstairs, and I immediately, when I hear him upstairs in the kitchen, I split out the front door, jumped in my truck, and he comes out on the front porch like, what are you doing? And I just peel out as fast as I can, and I'm gone. Don't know what his intention was. Don't know if he was trying to Jeffrey Dahmer me. I don't know. But I wasn't that going to stick around to find out. So anyways, maybe he was just a nice guy. Don't know. Don't care. But that's where I was drawing the line. So those are 3 stories of how I almost got killed while I was collecting records, finding records, buying records. Like I said before, now that I'm older and wiser, I got a wife and kids. I got a lot more to live for than I used to. I do take a lot more precautions, and I do a lot less, home visits like that. I've got a shop now, so a lot of people can bring me things rather than me having to go out. I don't carry lots of cash. I usually make sure that the person I'm going to is a legit person. I get enough photos and information from them to know. And that's kind of the way we do it now. A lot safer. If you go out and buy collections and things like that, I would encourage you to be safe as you're doing so, and to always kind of vet the people. Where I would usually go wrong is I would get excited and I would just throw all caution to the wind because I heard, Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin was going to be there, and I would just go. So that is, one piece of advice. If you're doing this and you're buying records, make sure that whoever you're going to is a legit person who really has records. Do your research. Now like I'll do Google Earth. I'll do all that stuff. Make sure if I'm going somewhere that it's a safe place. Make sure that my family knows where I'm going to be. All that stuff. So anyways, thank y'all for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook, whatever. Stay in tune and be safe out there when you're buying your records. We'll see you guys next time.